Good morning, CDXA members and DXers and friends. It's nice to be back on our every other Wednesday little video chat here called Zoom. I'd like to introduce my friend Ken K4ZW Whiskey from Stafford, Virginia. Ken is currently the Vice President and Secretary and Director of YASME. We've all heard of YASME, that sponsors a lot of dxpeditions. He has been in the diplomatic telecommunications service, supporting secure services, telecom services between the embassies of the world, U.S. embassies of the world. He's currently a broadcasting director of governors. He is a low-band DXer and a contester, and I think we probably he deserves the credit for actually getting ET3AA on the air and really getting it supported and getting those guys active. I was lucky enough to work them early. I think it was earlier this year on FT8, and got a very quick credit for that. So that was a nice new one on the digital mode. With that, Ken, I'll turn it over to you and we'll enjoy this great program. I've seen it before of ET3AA. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
All right, Gary. Well, thank you very much for having me, and Ray for setting this up, and the rest of you for being here. I'm glad I have the opportunity to do this, and glad you invited me. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at amateur radio in Ethiopia. I call it the ET3AA story, but I really want to focus on a couple things, and that is the youth activities that are taking place there. There's always a lot of talk about needing to get fresh blood into amateur radio, and we certainly need to do that. When you look at what's going on over there, of all places in the world where you think, okay, we can get some traction and get some youth involved in amateur radio, you wouldn't expect Ethiopia to be one of them, but it's amazing what's going on there. And so I want to share that. And then in particular, two trips that I made with a good friend of mine, Bob W9XY. So that'll kind of be the focus of this presentation. Okay, so Gary touched a little bit on my background. Let me just expand a little bit more. In 1984, I did join the Diplomatic Telecommunications Service, and that was working with communications out of our embassies overseas. Right after I came on board, before I got into my training, they asked me if I wanted to spend a month or two in Africa. Well, actually, I had the choice between London or Africa. Now, most sane people would pick the trip to London. I said, no, I want to go to Africa because I had visions of all this rare DX and everything. So that's exactly what I did. So that was kind of my first exposure to the continent of Africa. I did get a license in Liberia and operated for about a month as EL2 Charlie Delta. Had a good time with that. Currently, as Gary said, employed by, it's now the U.S. Agency for Global Media. We had a name change. And a lot of my work has been in the, when you think of Voice of America, USAGM is the parent agency for VOA and the other broadcast services. We tend to think of VOA and all the big shortwave stations, and a lot of that still exists. But they also have a pretty expansive FM broadcast network, and we have over 100 stations worldwide, and that's been something I've been working on the last 6-7 years. And a lot of the focus for that has been in Africa, so that's how I've been making my trips over there. And it's kind of funny how I got involved in that, because I was doing some IT projects. I'm really not an IT guy, but you got to do something. And my boss and one of the other guys showed up in my office one day and said, you want to go to Bangui? And I said, yeah, why not? And they looked kind of dumbfounded. They said, really, you would go? I said, yeah. Do you even know where it is? I said, yeah, it's capital of Central African Republic. Said, and you'd go, huh? I said, yeah, of course. So apparently no one else wanted to go to do a technical site survey for an FM station there. So I wound up going, and was very successful. And a couple months later, they came back, and I think I wound up going to N'Djamena, Chad, and Bujumbura, Burundi. So that kind of got my foot in the door with the FM program. And then when the guy who was running it retired, I took over. The neat thing about this job, though, is that on the front end of putting in a broadcast station, you have to get, of course, authorization from the regulators. A lot of times it's a license from the media authority, but then you get involved with the technical people as far as the technical parameters of your FM station, the frequency assignment, that sort of stuff. And that's typically where, if the country has an amateur radio service, that's where those people are located in those divisions. So I'm always a little bit careful to mix amateur radio with my work because I'm there to get us a broadcast license. I don't want to do anything that might jeopardize that. But there have been occasions where meeting with these people, I've inquired about amateur radio. And, I remember one time in Togo in 5 Victor 7, we were kind of sitting around the table and the guy's got his laptop and he pulls it off and pulls it up and he starts reading off a database of call signs. And one was that he asked me if I knew a guy from Germany named or with the call sign DJ6SI. Well, of course, so it was kind of fascinating to go through that. But was able to get a license in South Sudan. I am licensed as Zulu 81 Zulu. The license needs to be renewed if I get back there again, but that was a result of working with the regulators for a broadcast license, and they just gotten the Z8 prefix assigned, and I thought, great, I'm gonna see if I can get a license, and I did. Okay, ET3AA is also sometimes known as ET3YOTA, Youth on the Air. They have the event every December, so sometimes you use a special call sign. But it's located at the Addis Ababa University Institute of Technology, and it was founded at the university in 2011 by Sid May, ET3SID, who is sadly a silent key, but you see Sid in the picture on the left there with a couple of the students. I only know the girl in the middle, Daggy. She was one of the first people I met when I started going there, and I do keep in touch with her from time to time. But there's a picture of the entrance into the university, and then the building is 4 stories, and there's a penthouse on top, which you'll see here in a second, where all the antennas reside. Okay, this picture was actually taken prior to our December 2020 trip, and what you see is a big rotatable log periodic. That thing is a monster, but it covers 7 megahertz. We can get on 40 meters with it, all the way up to 10 meters. There's some VHF, UHF antennas there, which you'll see in a bit. We took some of that down. There's a 6-meter antenna interlaced in there. And then that vertical is a 18-meter spider pole, one of those fiberglass poles that we brought over in December of 2020 to use for a 80 and 160-meter antenna. And that whole area up there is all metal roof. So we've got a fantastic counterpoise ground plane, and it actually extends further out than you can see from this picture. And then as you're looking at the picture behind you too. So there's a pretty extensive counterpoise, which is fantastic for that vertical. Okay, so 2018, Bob W9XY, who I've known since high school. We met at W9DXCC in Chicago, and developed a friendship over the years. He's kind of a world-class traveler himself, but he'd never been to Africa. And he said, hey, I think I'd like to go sometime. He said, when are you going back to Ethiopia? So he had some time off in December. We decided to go over. It was, as I said, December was Youth on the Air month. So the plan was to go over there and to celebrate YOTA month with the club station, operate with that call sign, do a little bit of work at the station, and just kind of hang out for the week. So since Bob hadn't been to Addis before, been to Africa, I flew to Chicago the night before, met up with him at O'Hare. We spent the night at whatever that hotel is there at O'Hare, Hilton or Hyatt or something. And anyways, the next morning we got up and boarded the Ethiopian flight, which is direct from, talking before, from Chicago to Addis, about 13 hours. Ethiopian Airlines is fantastic. Great service, very modern fleet. Boy, they cover the globe, and especially all the places in Africa I have to go. So they had no issues flying them. I fly them quite often, as a matter of fact. Okay, so one of the things we want to do in this trip, as I said, and as Gary mentioned, I'm kind of a low band guy. I like operating low bands. So we wanted to try to do something on 80 and 160. Um, we got in that Ethiopian flight arrives early in the morning. So we got to the hotel and had some breakfast and showered and slept for a while. So I guess probably early afternoon, we went into the station and Bob met all the students there and I got a chance to catch up with them. But I kind of decided before sunset I wanted to get something up for 80 and 160 so we could operate that night, just try it out. I didn't expect we'd have anything, you know, real good to put up, but I just wanted something that would take some RF and hopefully radiate a signal a little bit that we could work some stuff on the low band. So basically what we did is we put up that spider pole. It's kind of an inverted L, although the wire coming off the top sags quite a bit, but there's a trap near the top of that thing for 80 meters. And then you can see in that picture on the left, all I did was just took a chassis mount and tied it into the roof and, away we went. So as I've told people, this is probably one of the ugliest antennas I've ever built. But as we came to find out that night, boy, did it ever work. We got on 160 and almost immediately we had a pileup of all of Europe. I was expecting maybe some Eastern European stations, but we had a lot of people calling us. And pretty soon the guys on the East Coast and some of the Midwest were starting to say, hey, we're hearing you here. And I thought, my God, really? Because this antenna looks pathetic. But and we went to 80 meters later on too and had some pretty massive pileups, even to the US. So, looked ugly, but it worked fantastic. So operating from the university at night requires special permission from security. And then some of the club members have to be there to stay with us. Again, we're guests. This is their club. So here's the crew that stayed with us that night, and all decked out in their DX engineering stuff. Tim sent me some shirts and hats to hand out. And while Bob and I were operating, they were working on some electronics projects you can see. And we did some operating, and then we would stop once in a while and give them a chance to operate as well, because it's their station. We're the guests, and they're very interested in what we're doing, and they love getting on the radio too. So a couple times I got on 40-meter SSB and worked split a little bit and worked some stuff in the US and did a pretty good job with it. The thing I told people is, you have to remember sometimes we had pretty good runs going on 80, 160, whatever, and we would stop and people were like, hey, what are you doing, man? We're hearing you, we're calling. Yeah, I know, but we got to give these guys a chance to play with their station as well. So that was part of the reason. So we had pretty good luck on the low bands, although we did find out, and this was certainly not unexpected, but it's a very noisy location. You're in downtown Addis Ababa. The infrastructure is pretty old, pretty decrepit. As you have throughout most of Africa, there's a lot of cheap Chinese products on the market. And, we have our issues with the stuff here. I would say that that stuff over there is even built cheaper if that's possible, and radiates a lot of noise. So we clearly were being heard quite well, but we had some issues hearing the people calling us. So we got back from that trip in December. I talked to Tim K3LR and Rod K8RR at DX Engineering and said, hey guys, we got some issues with the receive. What are your thoughts? You got anything we might be able to deploy which would help us hear better from the station? And so, we had about a 30-minute call, discussed a bunch of stuff, and they were recommending products. And I thought, oh man, this is going to get pretty expensive. But they said, no, we're going to donate this to the station. And they told me, because I operate the low bands from some other countries too. They said, if you can use it elsewhere, go for it. But it was their gift to us and to the station, which was really, really nice of them. So they shipped the stuff to me at home here. And you may recall in January, well, actually, I think it started right around Christmas time. Government had a 6 or 7 week shutdown. Well, I'm a federal employee, so I was furloughed, and I had nothing to do other than chase DX and hang around the house, which isn't a bad thing. But we're not allowed to log into our email or anything, so we were shut down. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all this equipment and thinking about our trip. And there really was no end in sight for the furlough. And finally I thought, you know what? I'm going to look up I got online. I looked at the price of a ticket. Well, maybe $1,000, $1,100. I said, that's it. I'm going to go back to Addis January here and take this stuff with me and operate, because I thought I'm just tired of sitting around the house. So I told my boss, who's a ham, hey, I'm going to go over to Addis for a week or 10 days. If we do get called back, that's fine. I'll just use vacation time until I get back. So anyways, loaded up the gear, left on a day that was snowing like crazy. Got out about 4 hours late, flew up to Frankfurt, Germany, and then caught a connection there. Thankfully, had a little bit of time yet to catch the connection, and went down to Addis with all the equipment that was donated to us. So just want to briefly, some of the stuff we used over there. This NCC2 with a pair of active vertical antennas. It allows you to phase the two to null the noise. I guess most of us here in this group have been doing this stuff for a long time, and it's kind of second nature to us. And I get in these situations, I'm not always real patient. I want to get this stuff up and try it out. But I've got to stop and remind myself that these are young engineering students who don't have many opportunities to get hands-on with stuff. They're interested in amateur radio and this equipment because they'll look at it and ask me, what does this do? So I've got to stop. And in this case, I gave them the vertical antenna with the instructions. I said, all right, guys, you build this, you put it together. And then we sat down and we just kind of a block diagram of all the pieces, what they did and how this was supposed to work. And they're very interested in that. So, it took a little bit longer to get some of this stuff up and running, but it certainly was well worth the time because it gave them some practical hands-on experience. So this actually worked quite well, nulling out the noise. The only problem is, I think we were also nulling out some of the signals from the Northwest. It would be Europe and US. So we cut down the noise quite a bit, but I think we were losing some of the people that were calling us as well. Okay, one of the other things we had was one of these active magnetic loop antennas. As I tell people, I've seen these before. I just thought, the physics of it, it's such a small thing. Think of 80, 160, you think of big antennas or long beverages, that sort of thing. And I really thought, how effective could this be? Well, actually it worked quite well. I was quite surprised. It's bidirectional, so we did null quite a bit of noise. And a lot of the stations that I worked from Europe and the US were off of this loop. The only issue is because it's bidirectional, if any noise source was coming from the rear end, we were going to pick that up as well. But it certainly proved worthwhile, and I was pleasantly surprised at the results that we had with it. This is a picture I just kind of throw in because this is looking out the window towards the east, sunrise in Addis Ababa. So, you've been operating all night. It's a bit of a drag. You're tired. Then they have this beautiful sunrise starts popping up over the window. So you're kind of hoping you get maybe some gray line enhancements from the 180 or 160. But you also know that the end of the shift is about there, and pretty soon you'll be able to pack up and go back to the hotel and get some breakfast and shower and try to sleep a little bit and come back again for the next night. So, but it's a beautiful sunrise, beautiful view out the shack window. So Bob was interested in going back again. So we planned a trip December of 2020. I had been there in September on my own, and it was a nice visit, but there was a lot of problems at the station. The reverse beacon network, that node was down. The big RLP was not rotating. We had discovered a horrible noise that came on in the evening and pretty much blanked the entire HF spectrum, and meant we couldn't operate in the evening. It just couldn't hear anything. So there was quite a laundry list of things which needed some work, and I just left in September feeling a little bit dejected because I thought, man, things are kind of falling apart. There's a lot of work to be done here, and it was kind of on my shoulders at least to arrange to, how we're going to do this. So when Bob said in December, hey, I'd like to go back, it's perfect. I said, let's do it. And I got a laundry list of things we can work on. And, it's great working with the kids and everything, but it was certainly beneficial to have Bob there to try to get in and fix some of this stuff. So this time we flew out of Washington Dulles Airport, still about 13 hours. And this time, of course, we had to wear masks the entire 13-hour flight, which is not enjoyable. But the thing is, before you get on the plane, everyone has to have a negative COVID test. And so, I felt relatively sure that most people on the plane didn't have COVID. And I'll admit, once the meal service ended and the lights went down and, it was dark outside and everything, the mask did slip down just a little bit. So anyways, okay, one of the things we had on our list to do in December of 2020 was clean up the shack, and you can see they had a bunch of old chairs. So we went out and bought them some new chairs. Remember in the beginning of the presentation, there was one tower that had some VHF, UHF stuff and a 6-meter beam. So the VHF, UHF stuff wasn't being used. We stripped all of that off the tower. Some of it was just broken anyways. And we pulled the 6-meter beam down, cleaned that all up, put it back together, and we replaced the feed line going to it was maybe like an RG8 or something. It was looked pretty old, and the rotator cable only was long enough to get us to another office in the building, but not to the shack. So once again, Tim and the crew at DX Engineering donated some brand new RG213 and some new rotator cable to put on that beam. So we did that, got the beam back up, and it's ready to go for the 6-meter VHF season coming up here soon. And you can see Bob W9XY on the tower, along with Nagetu giving him a hand. And a couple more pictures. There's that 2-meter. I don't know if that was an EME or what. They're doing some satellite stuff, but that thing was pretty rough shape too. So we decided to take that down. And that's Ephraim on the left. He's the president of the Ethiopian Amateur Radio Society. And you can see Bob and I working on the 6-meter beam. The shack was in fairly decent shape, although the layout of the equipment, if you look at the two pictures on the left, was kind of spread out. And I had wanted to get a shelf so we could kind of consolidate everything right in front of us, make it a little bit easier. And the wiring was a mess, both, just the interconnect cables and the electrical stuff. So I thought, look, let's get a shelf and we can clean up the wiring and everything. And we didn't, obviously they don't have any IKEAs in Addis Ababa. We were trying to find something we could just kind of put together. That didn't happen. So we went to a local furniture shop and had the shelf made, and there you see it. But cleaned up the shack quite nice. And we got a couple of new electrical outlets and screwed those on the back of the desk and cleaned up the electrical connections too, because things were just kind of dangling there, and every once in a while a plug or something would fall out and you didn't know whether the power went out to the university or a plug fell out. So we cleaned all that up as well. I should mention, Gary mentioned too, working us on FT8 or FT4, one of the modes. We did get that fired up, and there you see in Sumeru operating FT8. Bob brought along a venture paddle. They're interested in learning CW. So he was working with Nagetu and a couple of the guys, and we hooked up the paddle so they could play with it a little bit. I'm not sure how they're doing as far as learning CW. They're pretty busy with everything else, but there's some online courses they had signed up for and that sort of thing. And I think it's great. I mean, I hope they, I'd like to see them be able to operate CW. The only thing is, for a lot of us, it's been quite a few years since we were novices. But remember how intimidating that first QSO was. I mean, at least for me, it was a little bit nerve wracking, right? I had my straight key out. Well, imagine you learn CW and your first CW contacts, you get on the air in your ET3AA and half the world is calling you. So I don't know how they're going to hold up, and probably have to do it while one of us is there. But nevertheless, I applaud their interest in CW, and maybe we can get them going and get them a little bit of practice. Since we left in December, one of the things we talked about was getting the room repainted because the paint was in pretty rough shape, and they had some moisture issues, which had been fixed, but they said, yeah, no problem, we'll take care of it. And I just kind of assumed that, well, we'll see. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Well, one day Bob and I get some pictures. Hey guys, we're clearing out the shack. They're going to come and paint this weekend. Wow, fantastic. So all that cable was piled up under the tables. They pulled all that out. You can see the middle picture. Everything was disassembled and moved out of the room, which is great because I told them make sure the stuff is covered up good. I didn't want paint on our new furniture or any of the equipment or dust, that sort of thing. But they actually moved everything out. And afterwards, they went across the street and had some pizza and sodas and celebrated their hard work. So the room's been painted, which is great. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I understand the equipment is back in there and everything is set up again. So we're going to have a first class station here before we're all done. Okay, I mentioned the rotator didn't work in September. And so we worked on that in December 2020. I spent about 2 days up on that tower. There are a number of issues. One is the AC voltage, 240 volts up there, had been disconnected down in the building. So we got that fixed, but there was a couple other loose connections. And you can see, I mean, that rotator is massive, as is the antenna. And I kept thinking to myself, man, what happens if we can't fix this thing? I mean, what on earth are we going to do? You don't just, with a come along, jack up that antenna, or, what do we do for a replacement rotator? So I was quite concerned. We don't get this fixed, what are we going to do? Well, thankfully we were able to. The only thing remaining is the position potentiometer was fried, and I think it can be replaced without a whole lot of trouble. So for right now, they just have to look out the window at which direction it's pointed, but it is turning again, thankfully. And one of these upcoming trips, we'll get a new pot and install that, and we should be good to go. We have been working for a year or more, trying to get another university a license and kind of do another ET3AA sort of thing. One of the major technical universities is interested in doing this. So we've had some meetings with them over the last year or so. On the left is Sergey. He's one of the first guys I met when I started getting involved with ET3AA. He's the former president of the club. There I am. There's Dr. Hailu from the new university, and Bob W9XY. So we had a meeting at the Hilton to discuss those plans again. We submitted the application, and as is usually the case, the Ministry of Telecommunications approved it. No issues with them. But it has to go to the security ministry. And that's where all the applications the last 5, 6, 7 years have died. And unfortunately, this one did too. They rejected it. They weren't interested in issuing a license, even though it's a well-known university funded by the government. I think there's probably a couple factors involved. One is there's a little bit of ongoing unrest in the north of Ethiopia, and they're probably reluctant to issue a station that can communicate globally. And I think the other thing is it's a week-long youth activities thing, and you can see in 2016 they had 110 youth from all parts of Region 1 met, And there's some of the things that they did during the week long. It's exposure to amateur radio, different parts of amateur radio. I think the other thing too, which is certainly beneficial, is some of the tourist attractions, the cultural events, and they forge international relationships, which I told them you really needed to do, network with people. I said, you never know, this might be someone who can later on help you with a job, maybe get you a visa to come up there and work or visit or something. But make contacts with these people and stay in touch with them. One morning I was on the train going into DC, going to work, and Getu sends me a text. He says, because I think the Yasmi Foundation sponsored, we had 5 that year. Yasmi sponsored 3 that are travel expenses, and I did 2 of the other guys. But Getu was one of the people I helped support. And he texts me when I'm on the train. He says, Ken, you're the greatest. This is awesome. We just talked to the space station and astronaut so-and-so, and he gave me his name and everything. And he was just tickled to death that here he is at this week-long conference, and you got a chance via amateur radio to talk to the space station. And that was really cool. I was happy to see his excitement, and glad it was worthwhile for him to do that. So let me wrap things up here. When we departed after the December 2020 trip, Bob actually stayed a couple days longer. He was having such a good time, but I had to get back for work. So unlike September when I left and I was kind of dejected, I got on the plane that evening. I was really happy with everything we had gotten done. Good visit. We had a chance to make a lot of contacts, and I just really felt good about things. And that's always a good way to get on a plane when you go home, whether it's for work or something like this. I boarded the Ethiopian Airlines flight from Addis to Frankfurt. As I mentioned before, I like to, when I come back this way, I like to break up the trip. And so I got on the plane and I'm putting my bags in the overhead. And remember, we're all wearing masks now. But one of the crew members comes up and says, I know you. You look familiar. I said, really? I looked at her. I said, boy, she doesn't look familiar at all. I said, I think you got the wrong person. And she says, no, I know you. So I pulled my mask down just as if to say, I'm not the person you're thinking I am. Well, she slips her mask down, and it was a doula who was one, I talk about some of the first people I met when my first visits over there. She was one of the 5 or 6 when I first got there, the people I met. She left after 6 months or a year. She left the university to enroll in a program with Ethiopian Airlines, who's a major employer of people there. But in the mechanics program, she left her engineering studies to join Ethiopian Airlines as a mechanic. And she's not someone you would expect having a wrench in her hand working on big jet airplanes, but she did it, and she enjoys that work. Well, what Ethiopian Airlines does is on their flights, they have a technical person ride along in case there's any issues with the plane, helps get it turned around in Frankfurt for the flight back home. Well, she had been assigned to my flight. So lo and behold, when I get on, she recognized me from the work we had done together at the university. It's been probably 5-6 years since I've seen her. I kept in touch with her a little bit at first, and then we just kind of didn't exchange messages much. But to me, that was just the coolest thing in the world because, she talked about some of the stuff we did at the university. I showed her pictures of what we had just done, and I actually had some pictures on my phone of when she was there. And she was a darn good operator, by the way. She really did fantastic. So it was a little bit emotional for her just looking back at that time and knowing that she had a good time with amateur radio. For me, it just kind of hit home too that what we're doing over there is making an impact, and that really felt good. And as I've said, been a ham over 40 years now. Done a lot of cool things, gone to a lot of neat places, but getting involved in the club station over there is probably one of the most fulfilling things I've done. It was just something I thought, okay, I'm going to stop and see the station, talk to Sid, help him out a little bit. He passed away, and I thought, you know what? I'm worried about the club. I'm just afraid things are going to kind of fall by the wayside. Well, I got over there enough to help the students out. And they don't need anyone to tell them what to do. They've got their own ideas, and they're energetic enough and so on. And it's really, they've done a fantastic job of keeping this going, and every year recruiting new people. And boy, if Sid could really see what the seeds he planted and what this turned into, I think he'd be very, very happy, because we've done a lot of good stuff over the years. But it was just great to see a doula. We sat next to each other and talked for an hour or two, I guess, before we probably fell asleep on the overnight flight. But it was great catching up with her. So, okay, that's it. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
And to those children that you work with there at the university, do they all speak English?
They do, and most of them, their English is pretty good. Amharic's the local language, but yeah, they do.
Good, thanks.
This is John Scott calling. Am I getting through? Yeah.
Yep.
We have a benefactor for DxPedition. His name is Zoro Miyazawa. I think he was involved also because with that station, was he? Because he does a lot with youth.
Exactly, and I pulled one slide out of this as I was going through it last night. I wish I'd have left it in now, because there is a Yaesu FL 2100Z, I think it is, amplifier, which has Zoro's call on, his JH call, and then I think they were in 9 Echo 2 Alpha. But we've been in contact with Zoro, and during our trips, and he actually sent us a little book that he had done up when he operated him and Rudy. What's DJ? I can't remember Rudy's call now, but so yeah, he absolutely was involved in that, and the amplifier he donated is still there, and he was tickled to death to know that it was still in the shack.
Yeah, well, he has supported youth all over the world, and he actually was a donor of the DxPedition, what we call Ham with Hearts Fund. It's to try to aid DxPeditioners that wish to provide just a small support in a community, whether it's books, soccer balls, tennis shoes, or something like that. So he's really done some good stuff also around the world.
Yeah, he absolutely has, and he's a wonderful guy. I guess it was let's see, we missed Dayton last year, but the year before, last year Dayton was held. I ran into him at the airport at Dayton, and I actually gave him a ride to the hotel and everything, and we kind of kept in touch, and then this came up. But you also remember, he's been operating from Eritrea, which is just north of Ethiopia. I can remember one time those guys were up there operating, and I was in Addis, and I was sitting in my hotel room in the Radisson with a little portable radio listening to him run stations on 40 meters. But yeah, Zora's a great guy, and he has done a lot of work for the youth, and these are mostly college age students because it's at the university. But and then the ones, once they graduate, they come over from time to time. But they're like most kids. Once you graduate college, you're trying to get your career going and busy with work and find a girlfriend, boyfriend sort of thing. So but we keep in touch, and every once in a while, if I'm over there, we'll just hey, we're meeting Saturday afternoon for pizza, and whoever can make it, come on over, just to kind of keep the group together.
Well, as long as we have him on this call, I want to point down, at least on my screen, if I look down at the end, there's a guy called Dick Williams, who wrote the aggregator software for the reverse beacon network. Is that right, Dick?
Yeah, that's correct. I wrote that, and I was interested in that RBN station. Is that by any chance one of the ones that the YASME Foundation supported?
It is, but it's separate from the ones that we just recently did. We did 3 in North Africa, and then I think there was another 15. This one actually went in 3-4 years ago, but YASME did help with the some of the hardware.
It's good to see that operating, because some of those have not worked out so well.
Yeah, no, this one, the only issues we have is sometimes power goes out at the university or they lose the network connection. But for the most part, it's pretty reliable. And like I said, I mean, we've got a full-time support staff there. I mean, they've even come to the point now where they can remote into a remote access to it. So, you know, if it's at night or something, and I'll shoot them a note, say, hey, the RBN's down, just a second, and they'll somehow connect into it and go ahead and fix it. But what I have noticed with it, since this noise problem that came up in the evenings, is we're getting very few spots in the evening. That just kind of a testament to how bad that noise source is. But otherwise, it hears pretty good. And for some reason, it just always seemed pretty hot on 40. But yeah, it's worked well. And like I said, one of the few in Africa, especially in East Africa, that is online. But now that's good to know, Dick. And I'll let them know I talked to you. They'll be impressed.
Did you ever find the noise source, what it was? It seems it was pretty regular at 5 o'clock, you said, right?
Yeah. The answer is no, we didn't. We just ran out of time in December. We will take a look. As a matter of fact, I'm going over there next month. Bob was going to go, and then he had to back out. So I don't know where it's coming from. We'll take a look. I really kind of feel like this is a needle in a haystack sort of thing, but it is something that's switching on like right at 5 o'clock, and it's so damn broad too. I mean, it covers from 10 meters all the way down. It may not even be on the university. And you know, that's the other thing too, is telecommunications and radio and that sort of thing are really tightly controlled in Ethiopia. There's no way I want to be walking around on the street or driving around in a car with a 3-element Yagi hanging out trying to find the noise source, because the authorities will pick up on that pretty quick.
Any more questions, folks?
Is any of the instructional staff over there helping you with this?
As a matter of fact, yeah, we get great support from the university. And I have met one of the professors who's kind of, I guess, responsible for them getting the space for the station. And, you know, once in a while, as a matter of fact, I should text him. Thank you for reminding me. But, you know, for his projects or his class, if he needs parts or something like that, he'll send me a list, and I'll bring stuff along just to kind of grease the skids, if you will. But no, I've talked to him in the past, and he's interested in what they're doing up there. And he said, do you need anything? And I said, frankly, as long as you can keep space available for the station, you know, for this room and for the antennas on the roof, I said, I don't think we can ask for a whole lot more. You know, just give us a home for the station. And so from that standpoint, yeah, the university's been very supportive.
Has the U.S. Embassy been supportive of this, or do they have any involvement at all?
They don't have any involvement, although I will tell you that big RLP you see up there came from the old U.S. Embassy. I don't know if it's been up on 10 years now or so that we built a new embassy, but I understand that old RLP came from the old embassy, RLP and the rotator. So.
A rotator, I think you said it ran off of 240 volts.
Correct, yes.
That's kind of dangerous, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's the local voltage there too. You know, we have 120, they have 240, 50 hertz. So that's kind of their standard. But yeah, I mean, you know, you don't want to get your fingers across it, obviously. But, you know, it's kind of funny because I had a couple loose wires up there. And I thought, okay, how am I going to solder? They really should be soldered. How am I going to do that? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, wait a minute. Because they had a little soldering pencil. I thought, I'm just going to take it up there and put a couple of wires on the plug for the soldering iron and put them in on the 240 up on that terminal strip, and bingo.
Good.
But boy, that big RLP, does that torque that tower when it starts to turn and when it stops, man. I mean, it's fine. It's not going to go anywhere. They did a real good job of putting that tower and embracing it, but that is a beast.
Ken, this is Gary. I don't know if there are any other questions. Let me see if there are any. If not, we'll let you go and do important things. Any more questions for Ken?
Ken, this is Paul A4ZZ. Early, you talked a little bit about Liberia, and I was over there in 1990 and got to see the VOA relay facility there. Is any of that still there, or did?
No, it's
gone now?
yeah. The VOA had a big relay facility there, as did the embassy for regional communications. And when I was there, I was 84, and that would have been for the embassy communications facility. But no, that Civil War broke out, and both those compounds were abandoned or overrun. So VOA no longer has the facility there, and neither does the embassy. We've got VOA has a site in Sao Tome. I guess that's probably the closest in West Africa. And we've got one down in Botswana. And I think that's it for Africa. Yeah.
One of our members is Charles Lewis. He actually ran the South.
Okay. Well, there you go. Sure, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. S9SS, and then his wife Leslie, right?
Right.
Yep. We know both of them well.
That had to have been tough because they lived right on the broadcast compound. I don't know how he did so well on 160 with all that RF floating around. Man, oh man. As I can remember, some people complain, "Oh, he can't hear." Well, he's got a 600, 700, 800 kilowatt AM station right in his backyard. He might be part of the reason why.
I was one of the lucky ones that did actually work him on 160 a couple of years ago when he was here.
Yeah, no, he did a great job on all bands, and he really gave it a go on low bands. I worked him as well, and he did a fantastic job. So,
anyone else for Ken?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me. Appreciate the chance to be here, and wish you guys all the best. I'll see you around on the bands. Like I said, I'm going back in May. What is it? The 8th to the 16th, I think. We'll get an announcement out at some point, but so.
Ken, thanks so much for the wonderful presentation. I learned more today listening to your presentation than I did before. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and thanks for the wonderful help to the club members, and maybe I'll work you on 6 meters there in May.
There you go. It's funny, Gary. I had a dream last night that I was operating 6 meters from over there, and I was working guys on the East Coast. So maybe that's an omen. I don't know. I just started thinking yesterday, well, we're getting close to 6 meter season when I'm over there, but we'll see. So no, I'm glad to share the story. It's really cool. My involvement, but they're doing a lot on their own too, and it's just great to see these young people in a place like Ethiopia so interested and involved in amateur radio. It gives you hope for the future, that's for sure.
Thanks for sharing this program with us very much, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again soon, maybe on a Zoom or somewhere on the bands.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
73.
All right, bye-bye.